Well, welcome to the Sean Trey Show, my podcast, and I'm really excited to talk to you. I haven't talked to you since we worked together. I mean, not outside of chat. I haven't talked to you since we worked together in 2007 on Angels and Demons, which was fun.
Yeah,
it's been a long time.
Thanks,
yeah,
I was just back there with that crew.
Really? What were you working on?
Mr. Ripley, which is part of the Talented Mr. Ripley series. There was the series of books. And so they're going to make a series of 8 episodes to cover the 5 books here. So
very cool.
It was really interesting. I was just there for a quick, do some second unit work. So it was fun to catch up with all that crew that we worked with, Angels and Demons.
That was a fun crew. Now, can you tell for people who don't know? I know who you are, and I highly respect you and your work. But who are you, and what do you do?
Andrew Rowlands. I'm a director of photography. I work in the motion film business. We make movies mostly, and at the moment, currently, I'm a second unit DP, which I do a lot of action work and a lot of not behind the scenes, but the action sequences that go into movies that require a lot of stunts and just general photography that the main unit won't sort of do. We'll do all that pickup work, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. Prior to that, I was an A camera operator on motion pictures, working on a bunch of movies, which I always forget the names of them at this point, but Angels and Demons, the whole Dan Brown series that we did, Gangs of New York, Star Trek East, Star Warsy things.
A lot of the Marvel movies as well, right?
Marvel movies, yes. The Winter Soldier movie.
How did you get into to film and the entire industry?
I first started in Perth, in Australia, back in the very late 70s, 78, 79, and just started carrying boxes and was a camera PA, basically, and that was it. And I finished high school, was supposed to go to college and do film and TV, but at the time it was really tough to get into a film and TV course in Australia. So I just started working as a freelance camera assistant and just kept going. By the time I was accepted into the college, I'd been working for 3 years. So the people at college said it's best that you stay doing what you're doing and you'll be better off. So I never went to film school, which much to my angst that I never got to sort of have a real good grounding or basis in cinema, which was one of the things I obviously had to do just by going to the movies and listening to stories, reading books and stuff like that, which was all fine, but that's where I sort of got into the technical side of things and came up to the camera assisting world, focus pulling and operating in our DP. So
that's awesome.
I've been doing it since 1978, 79.
It's really awesome.
Yeah.
Now, as you got into it, you said that there was this progression of steps that you worked up in the industry. And what are some of those steps that a person who wants to aspire to becoming a DP has to go through? I
think then it was literally you had to do your time. Literally, my resume could have read able to lift heavy boxes and run fast. That's all people wanted you to do, right? And be hit over the head with a stick and go faster. But now it's different now, and you can really start shooting. There's so much more technology available to, like a first-time shooter, via iPhones or smartphones, via the computers. Be able to cut and edit and colorize stuff and do a lot of your own production.
This is something that comes up a lot when I talk to young filmmakers on the podcast. It's like, before, if you wanted to make your own movie, it was inaccessible because the gear was so expensive and shooting on film was prohibitively expensive in and of itself.
Exactly.
But now, I mean, you get something like, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K. It's a really accessible camera, or any of the small form, mirrorless cameras are shoot beautifully,
Absolutely. The Sonys, the Canons, any of those cameras. I mean, and even Red have come out with the Komodo camera.
Yeah, the Red
which
Komodo.
Is fantastic. I've got one of those as one of my stunt cameras, instead of using GoPros. And again, GoPros, I mean, there's so many cameras out there that you can use, right? But then having the post-production facilities on your laptop now, the sound editing, video editing, and special effects and visual effects that you can put in there, it's just fantastic.
Like today I was editing a music video for my wife, and she wanted some skin smoothing. And even with that, like before, I would have to create a mask layer, and then I would have to go through and each you essentially just track her face through the whole thing. I bought a plugin today for $100, and it's like it automatically tracks and does the whole thing. It literally saved me about 3 days of editing.
Oh, absolutely.
And it was just done, and I was just like, it was mind blowing. How much of a powerhouse is in a laptop now.
And the applications that you can get online that are open to everybody to be able to use them. Well, you would never be able to do that a couple of years ago, because at that point, when that sort of work started to happen, which is, touch-ups have always been done in film days and into digital days. But there was a small company in Santa Monica that used to do that. And it was a very secret little company, and it was just a very plain door in Santa Monica, a little house in Santa Monica that the work used to go to. They didn't get a credit, but they were industry leaders in doing touch-ups and doing face, making our actors look like $1 million. But that was a very expensive process, and that was like a little niche industry these guys did. They've now gone on to do bigger and better things, but they made a fantastic living on doing that. It was very involved and very detailed. But now, like you said, $100 for a plug-in, and there you go. And soon it'll be part of a package, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, when you go and work on your shoots with you said you're doing a lot of second unit work. Second unit, for people who might not know, would be the main actors are not necessarily there, right?
Correct. Yeah. So it's a combination of like just using stunt doubles, or when the actors have to do stunts and you're going to film part of that stunt.
That's really awesome. Now, when you shoot stunts, what are some of there's a lot of moving parts to really be working with. What are some of the things that you have to think about when you're shooting stunts and doing the DOP on stunt work or these larger, more involved shots?
I think the main thing is preparation. Planning and preparation is one of the main things we have to do. Knowing what we're trying to achieve, the mechanics behind it, obviously the safety issues, and you work with the stunt coordinator, you work with the second unit director, and also the first ADs and the safety people to work out, make sure that everyone's going to be in the right spot at the right time and everyone's safe, and you can do that. Then it's looking at where we can place the cameras to capture that moment. So you're always looking for that moment, something that really is going to tell that story. So we work with the second unit director and then obviously the stunt coordinators to make sure that you're in that right spot at the right time. Whether you have to move the camera or have to place the camera in a certain spot, and hopefully you don't wipe the camera out, and obviously do not want to wipe out any of the team that's shooting it. So safety is a big issue as well. So that's all in that preparation and planning. Then on the day, tech recce's, and when we go and look at the sites where we're going to shoot at or on the stages, we have a lot of rehearsal time and stuff like that, make sure it's all going to work. And on the days of shooting on film, we used to absolutely make sure that you're going to shoot it right, so you do a lot of rehearsals and stuff like that before you shot some film. Nowadays we have the luxury of shooting on digital, where you could probably shoot the rehearsals and maybe part of it might work, and then you refine it from there.
It's really interesting, and it's really interesting too, seeing like the advance in technology with like I'm absolutely fascinated by the technology on the Mandalorian, those screens that are rapid.
The volume is what they call that, and
the volume.
Baz Iderman and Greg Fraser were very instrumental in getting that set up for the Mandalorian. In fact, they won some awards for that. But that technology is really, really, it's intricate. It's very tech savvy. I mean, very tech intensive. So there's a lot of work that goes into making that. A lot of pre-production work, building the sets in the computers. Like all the graphics have to be set up. The world has to be created for them to work inside that world. So then that's all in the background, and then you're placing the characters in front of that screen. And you can move around in that volume, which is really cool. So, for instance, at a sunset sort of scene, you can shoot that all day. You're not trying to scramble for 20 minutes to get that moment.
Yeah.
Or things they do like that.
That's amazing, because like I remember reading about when they were shooting La La Land and they were trying to get that sunset scene, and it was literally like they had this dance, and it was like, you know, it was a real crunch time type of a thing to be able to get that shot off, versus this new technology gives people the flexibility, like we can keep sunset up for, you know, 6 hours, you know, or
absolutely.
however many hours that shot takes.
Yeah.
Now, what type of when you do these things, like, because one of the things that I had a good friend of mine, Bradley Greenwood, on, and Bradley was actually, he's also an Australian, and he worked, he's a makeup artist, it's not makeup, he's like in prosthetics, and he was working with Weta in New Zealand for a lot of the things, and he did a lot of work on the Lord of the Rings, and he was talking to me about just the absolute mountain of pre-production that goes into a lot of these features. What's some of the pre-production like for you as you're preparing for some of these major feature movies?
Well, it varies these days. I mean, I can go from minimum of 4 weeks to up to 12 or 15 weeks prior to shooting. And coming in earlier is better always, because we're trying to blend in with what the first unit are doing. And then if the scenes we're doing are very complicated, it takes a lot more time to set up and go through with all the different departments, hair and makeup, and as I said before, the second unit director, the stunt coordinators, and do rehearsals and find out what's going to work, what sort of equipment's going to work for that particular scene, and are we telling the story, you know. So again, coming back to the first unit director and first unit DP, making sure that we're capturing it the way they want to see it to be, you know, plugged into their movie. So there's a lot of organisational stuff that goes on prior to shooting, the first day of shooting. It's
like a lot of moving parts. Like there's a lot of moving parts. Now, it was interesting that you made a point about using the Komodo as like instead of a GoPro, and are you finding it really fun to play around with some of the new cameras that are coming out, you know, some of these small form cameras and things?
Yeah, I think at heart I'm still a techie, you know, the geeky sort of guy. I love any of the new technology that is going to work for us. Some of it will and some of it won't. Like some of the stabilizers are fantastic, some are average, you know. But lately I've been playing with the DJI RS2 and the Komodo on that. And that's like a mini Steadicam. So, you know, I have a Steadicam background, so I used to work in Steadicam for like 25 years and used to carry all that around, big cameras and small cameras. Everything from IMAX cameras to 435s, 235s. But now this Komodo and this RS2, just carrying this handheld gimbal around, which we just did a previous sequence for this next movie that we're about to do again in preparation. We went into a jail and did a breakout scene. And chasing the main character through the jail, where he's trying to escape out of this jail and fighting people and getting stuck somewhere. And we were able to keep going. We did it in a series of 3 or 4 sequences. It looks like one big shot. It's just fantastic. So it's a great tool. Awesome. And the Red Komodo blends in with the Mini LF, which will be the primary camera, the ARRI Mini LF.
Yeah.
And so blending those two things together will be great. Whereas before with the Komodo, coming in with a big sensor camera like the ARRI Mini LF and then the GoPro sensor, to blend that in together, you have to grade the larger image into GoPro world and then try and expand the GoPro up into it. So there's always like a moment where the video quality, like because I haven't got a lot of light here, which you can see my video quality is not so great at the moment because I'm in a low light situation. So it's like I could say your video is like the Mini LF and mine's like the GoPro. So that blending of the two videos is really difficult. So we try and keep it as smooth as possible so the audience doesn't jump back into your seat going, oh, what happened there?
Yeah, now that's really interesting. Now, I was watching the other day. There's one of the areas that I'm geeking out on is some of the new Flycam tech, there was and the ability to put some of these like I saw someone throwing this a red Komodo onto this really beautiful like fly cam, and it was just the footage they were getting was unreal. Are you finding that it's that you're getting with some of these new before the fly cam tech, everything had to be with like, a techno crane, but now, or a helicopter. Now there's some really interesting options. Is it changing so much that people have to really constantly rethink things, or do people still, kind of stick to the tried and true methods?
Oh no, you absolutely. You have to rethink how you want to. First of all, you want to think, where do I want to put that camera? And knowing that there are all these options now. So I think if you in your podcast, maybe you could put a link into XM2 Pursuit, and I do a lot of work for those guys, because we're flying like FPV drones, which are very small drones, with a small camera on.
Super cool.
And then we can take that thing anywhere. And I wish I could share with you some of the footage a little test we've just done recently, and seeing how this camera moves around. But the drones now, or UAVs, but the drones, they've taken you from the Technocrane, which has a limited space to be able to work in a volume, like 30-foot techno or 50-foot techno. And now the drone can take you up to 75 or 100 feet and keep moving you around in that space. Then if you have to go further and faster, then there's a helicopter. So the reverse engineer, you can go from a helicopter, come streaming in, then the drone will take over, then the Technocrane can take over, or now these FPVs, you can go all the way, and take it out. But they're really good for short, quick shots in the FPVs, because some of the cameras they want to use, the smaller they are, the smaller the quality camera, so it tends to lend itself to a quicker shot. But on a larger screen, that's what I'm always used to working on, this larger screen. But if you're, for use in laptop screenings or streaming services where you're just going out and you're going to view it on a tablet or a phone, you can use those cameras for a lot more stuff. The flexibility of using those cameras now is just fantastic. But we use them a lot. Star Wars, we used them a lot.
You do? That's what I was going to ask. Do you use them a lot?
Fast and Furious, I've just, Bond has just come out, 007, and we did the drone unit for that in material for a big chase sequence they did in Italy. And one of the big shots we did is this motorbike, not to spoil it too much, it was a big motorbike jump ramp where James Bond is escaping the bad guys, jumps into this Italian square where there's a parade going on, and he rocks up, and it's very cool. But we did this killer shot where we chased the motorbike up the ramp, and it's all done live. It's not a CG thing, it's all live. It's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Plus we do lots of like driving stuff and chasing stuff. It's very cool. Yeah.
There's one guy I follow on Instagram, Johnny FPV, and I think he's probably, you've seen him, right?
Oh, he's the rock star, absolutely. Yeah.
I just watched that channel, and I'm just like absolutely blown away with like, and it's thinking about where we're at right now. What blows me away to think about, like, where is this going to end up in 20 years? Like, that's what is mind-blowing for me, is like, we were so limited before, and like, let's be real, if we continue getting the technological advances with the cameras getting smaller, but better sensors on them, it's going to be insane to think about where we might end up. I'm super excited.
Yeah,
super excited.
The limitation of it was like, dare I say, heavy equipment, and we always want to get the best image quality. So we always try and go for the bigger sensor, but that's the processing power that we have at the moment. Once processing power becomes so much more efficient, then the sensors and the cameras can be smaller and more efficient. That's all we're trying to deal with at the moment. So, like you said, I can't think in 20 years I'll be absolutely gobsmacked, because I'll think, this is it, with your thumb or whatever it is. Because already there's micro drones that are flying around the size of
right.
Very, very small. And
just like, And to think when we were on Angels and Demons was when the iPhone was released. I remember like that was the summer that the iPhone came out, because I remember like everyone was sitting around set, playing with their iPhone. It was like the thing that everyone was like, and people were like, and it was these really rudimentary, touch apps. Like it was super rudimentary. The camera was really weak, but you look at like, there was I believe there was an action short shot by, I think, the DOP or the director of John Wick, and it was like just a snowball fight done with the iPhone.
And it was, who shot that? Who was the DP?
Who shot it?
Robert Oscar,
really?
Oscar-winning DP Robert Elswick, and he was like absolutely amazing. He loves it. He shoots with. I mean, he's a very it's Leicas. He shoots film on his film cameras. His Leica camera, motion stills camera. He's shooting beautiful images all the time, but he loves shooting on this iPhone. He absolutely loved it. So
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Though I'm kind of an in-between generation, because I grew up on film and I still love film. I shoot film for photography all the time. I've got my film camera set up here. It's been tough to be in lockdown because I haven't been able to get any film. It's like I'm itching to get out and get some film. But one of the things that I found growing up with shooting film, and my dad was an avid photographer, and he would go around the world taking do photography shoots on archaeological digs, and it was really awesome to see the photos he'd bring home. And from when I was a kid, from the first camera he got me, I remember he got me an old Canon, a manual focus and all that, and it was great. But when you shoot on film, you really have to think about your shots. Mm-hmm. You're planning things, and from the get-go, I was, where are you at? Stabilize and get your shot. Pick your angles, and he would teach me that from the get-go. When I was a little kid, he's like rule of thirds. We're looking at Fibonacci. And that was drilled into me. Whereas, when I now work as a director and producer here in Vietnam, and I'm getting all these young guys coming in, and they just are moving all over with their gimbals, and they're like, don't worry, man, we'll fix everything in post. And I'm like, but where's your shot? Yeah. Like a lot of the people I don't know. Have you noticed some of the people that you're working with have lost something not shooting on film? Yeah,
absolutely. The discipline of shooting on film, it's all about time, and because now we just keep going and going and going. So now we're having 20-minute takes, whereas before we used to have, we might keep the camera rolling, but that would only roll for 4 minutes or 10 minutes at maximum, for 1,000-foot roll. So there was a discipline of reloading, stopping, thinking about it. There was a built-in time factor there. But also the discipline of coming up through the system, which was built in from the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and 60s, and 70s. Shooting on film it's a precious commodity. It wasn't just something we had an endless magazine to shoot. I mean, we were responsible, fiscally responsible, to be able to not shoot a million feet of film. So these days with cards they can go for 20 plus minutes now. We just keep shooting. Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop. Keep going. And we have the scene where the director will walk out and talk to the actors, but we don't cut. And what are we doing? So the momentum from the crew, the shooting crew, you lose it because everyone goes into a pause mode and not really thinking about it. So that energy, I think you lose it. And not having planned that shot out, let's just shoot it, we'll figure out what's going to go. Let's rehearse it. We would rehearse things. Now we don't rehearse it. We shoot the rehearsals and see what happens. Sometimes it works out okay, but sometimes it doesn't. So people get mad when it doesn't work out on the rehearsal take, So it wasn't take one, that was a rehearsal. So the discipline is definitely going. I think, planning a shot, framing, composition are now happy accidents, a lot of them.
Yes. Yeah. And that's something that I was, one of the challenges I kept running into this. I was working with my team. I was like, all right, we need to this is the framing I want. This is what I want right here. And my crew was like, we're shooting in 4K, man. Just pop that back out, and then we can crop and post. And I was like, but that's cheating. You know what I mean? It's like,
we can actually go there right now, and you can put the camera there, and you can shoot it like that. Why not do that?
yeah, and that's what I'm always like pushing them to do. And I was like, and that's where I find that some of the technology has created, not laziness, but yet people have forgotten some of those fundamentals. And and I was blessed to have a father who was a photographer who drilled that into me from a young age. You just really, really pick your framing, really choose your angles. And I think it's interesting that's going on. And I was just curious, in the feature film, is that also something that, people were seeing?
Well, I think we're getting a lot of newer directors coming through, so that's how they're used to working. So we would say, like, for instance, behind your head there's a light that's burnt out a little bit. So I'd get the guys to go in there and put a little bit of a net on there or something just to tone it down so we could do that. But I know that someone would say, oh, don't worry, we can fix that later. But I can fix it right now. It'll take me 30 seconds, not even 30 seconds to do that. Boom, and we'll fix it. But now, don't worry about it. Just go, let's go. Well, then we'll spend 15 minutes talking about what we might shoot here. We could have fixed that. Well, I see it in lighting all the time. It's okay. We'll fix it later. That backlight's too high. Don't worry. I'll fix it later. Okay, who's me? Who's you?
That was something
green anyway. So.
That was something that my friend Bradley talked about, like when he was working on some of the big features. Like he was working on Aquaman, and they had spent just all this time preparing this really intricate suit, and they had the actor, they'd put on these prosthetics for like 5 hours. The guy looked awesome, and he's just waiting, the makeup team's waiting, and they're like, we're gonna put that in post. And they're just like,
it's like, but you can do it right here and there. I mean, it's some of it's fantastic, and some of the work they can do is really good, and that's how the industry is changing. In pre-production meetings, you used to have a big long table, everyone would sit down, have all the heads of the department, and the visual effects guys used to sit at one end of the table and be sitting there. Okay, right, we'll do this and do that. And now they sit at the head of the table with the director and the visual effects director, supervisor, will be at the head of the table. And we'll say, do you think we can do that? He'll go, we can do it. We'll fix that. Don't worry, we can fix that. So their role in filmmaking has gone from a smaller budget to a big chunk of the budget.
When we were on Angels and Demons, they were... The VFX team would kind of come in and quickly do their thing. They're like, hold on, can we please put up these markers? And like they were like, sorry guys, sorry to like pull away from it. But now, VFX is
absolutely
so integral.
They have a really big chair at the table. And even so, they, with some directors who rely on them a lot on say the big Marvel movies and stuff like that. Those guys have massive influence in how the movie is conceived, how it's shot, and how it will be post-produced, So
that's really interesting.
To their ideas and then trying to work in with the director's ideas as well.
Though I'm as not completely a purist, but just as someone who really loves, just great camera angles and great movement. When I watched 1917? Blown away. Absolutely. That first shot where the camera's just falling back, because one of the things, like I am forever thankful to what the role that I had in Angels and Demons. Like I came in and Jackson Rowe saved my life and is probably one of the most instrumental people in my career, because he grabbed me from a background and said, Sean, come in and be a stand-in. And I got to stay with the production for 5 months. Everything that I learned in film, I stood there and watched you guys work for, 12-hour days for 5 months. And it was just like this massive, education process. And I'm just forever thankful for that experience with you guys. But it was so interesting to see, when I think back on that, the you get something like 1917. When I first came on to set, you guys had already shot in Rome and everything, and I joined you at Hollywood Park.
Right.
And when one of the things that I noticed was how challenging it is to work with that many people, that many extras, that many people, because, there's always going to be that one person who's staring down the camera or just does something that's out. But in that movie, 1917, I watched that take again and again, and I was like, how did they pull this off so perfectly? It was amazing.
They had a lot of rehearsal time for that. They rehearsed a lot of it. They had a really great first AD who ran that show. Obviously, the director is a very accomplished director and and also Roger. Obviously, their eyes are glued to what they're doing, so every detail is scrutinized when they're shooting that thing. And there's it's a series of shots that they're able to do that. Obviously, it's the first big long shot, and that blends into a few other shots and goes obviously a bit longer and longer. But it's all about detail and rehearsal. And that didn't work. Maybe some of the takes, maybe somebody didn't do it properly. Yeah. Someone did look at the camera too long, or whatever, and let's do it again. Whereas someone might say, "Oh, well, no one ever saw that. I didn't really notice it." Well, you should notice it, because once you put it up on the big screen, you'll notice it. Yeah. Because if you review it on an iPhone or a small tablet, you're like, "Oh, it's not so bad." Project it on a 40-foot screen and go have a look at it and see how that's quite disturbing that someone's looking at the camera. It just takes you away from that moment. Like you're not in. As an audience member, all of a sudden, we're in a movie. Whereas before, you were totally engrossed. You're in that. You're walking with those people down the thing. You're part of it. It's a fine point, but that's the difference of making something special and making something not so special. Yeah.
Where do you go? What are some of the movies or what are some of the things that you turn to for inspiration as your what's your go-to stuff?
I have to go back to some of the older movies, and the storytelling part of the movie is what I love. And I mean, from the old musicals, which are just fun things to watch, like I always see, but Paint Your Wagon, for instance, is this slapstick musical from the 70s, was late 60s, 70s, and it's just a fantastic big musical number. I quite like the musicals like that, big stage productions. But some of the old thrillers, The French Connection, for instance, they're all great movies to watch. The Conversation with Gene Hackman, some of the old Bond movies for their corniness, but just like some of the big grandeur shots of those sort of movies. I just love all that sort of stuff. And then you go back to some of the early European cinema movie and Italian cinema movies that are just telling these great stories. And of course, the Japanese, movies.
I watched this short video. I'm a huge Akira Kurosawa fan, and I was watching and Kurosawa was such a perfectionist. So if there was wind in a scene or rain in a scene, they were putting it in. Everything was planned, and this video was this amazing video on the movement. And his movement stuff is so amazing. Like the direction the camera was moving, and there was always a cross movement. So if the actors are moving this way, then he would have the rain coming this way. And it's just masterclass.
Exactly right. So like Kubrick and those guys, the attention to detail and their willingness not to compromise. This is what we're doing. That's how we're going to shoot it. But everyone knew what the plan was. Everybody was part of the vision. So it wasn't like 30 or 40 people, 100 people working in just chaos. Everyone was going in the same direction. And nowadays, where, believe it or not, there's not a lot of communication prior to a movie. There's a lot of ineffective communication is the best way to put it. And people can go off on these tangents. So on the day, you think, oh my God, everyone knows that we're doing it this way, and they're not set up for it. So it can be really frustrating at times. But I think you have to try and share information, which is it's hard to do these days. There's so many caveats now that you're not allowed to share. You're not allowed to have a script. You're not allowed to have notes. You can't take photos on set. You can't share things. You have to go through the server. Things are monitored. It's like, oh my gosh, it's really hard to communicate with each other sometimes.
My wife got to play a major role for. She was cast as Nala in The Lion King, the Vietnamese version. And so it's pretty awesome. I mean, she was like, I get to play Beyonce for the Vietnamese version. That's awesome.
That's it.
But it was the time frame. It was really a crunch type thing.
Yeah.
Now that was really interesting. Now you travel a lot for your work, right?
Mm-hmm. So during this last lockdown, I think I've been to Australia. I started, I'm based in Los Angeles. I went to Australia to do a movie. We were going to shoot it in the United States, and we missed the corn growing season. So I suggested we go to Australia to shoot the movie because it was starting to be the corn growing season, and it worked out really well. That was the beginning of 2020, February 2020. Of course, then March came along, and February, March, COVID came along. We continued shooting. We finished the movie, but COVID was raging in the US, so I really couldn't go back. At one stage, they started closing the borders, and flights started, they just stopped flying back. So we were stuck there for a little while. We finished in June, July. Another project came up while I was in Australia because there was no COVID restrictions there at that time. So I thought, I'll stay and I'll do another movie. Ended up getting back to the States later that year, then was only in LA for a month, then got called to come back to Australia to do another project, and which led to another project. So I was away for nearly 12, 14 months. And I was supposed to be back in London doing another project. So that all got put on hold and da-da-da. And, for the last 14 months, I've been bouncing between the United States, Australia, and London. So I've sort of been lucky to be able to squeeze in, dare I say, trips and not get COVID. Very careful about being masked and stuff like that. But prior to COVID, we were travelling everywhere. To Iceland, to Jordan, to all over Europe, United States, Australia, Asia. And at one point, I was based in Singapore when I first started off in business. So that was really fun being based in Singapore and travelling through Malaysia, a little bit of Vietnam, a lot of Indonesia, up into Borneo, Japan, and into China and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun, those 2.5 years doing that. But traveling, I love it. I still love it. I still love getting on a plane and sitting there for 6 hours or 10 hours or 14 hours and rocking up somewhere and going, here we are. Let's see what happens
That's
now.
Awesome. Well, that's the beautiful part about the movie, and it's interesting that now I'm a huge fan of international cinema. Levels really rising. You look at the Korea right now is just killing it. They won the Oscar with Parasite, and right now the top show on Netflix is Squid Game.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, have you watched it yet?
Yeah, I haven't watched it. No, I only because I've been without internet access for the last couple of weeks, so I've been way behind.
I won't say anything.
I read a lot about it. I'm like, okay, it's interesting. Yeah, I think it's just amazing that we get to see, because of the streamers now. There's so much more international content coming through, and especially out of Scandinavian countries too. Some of the dramas that are coming out there, and which are being converted into English shows. But they're just fantastic. Beautifully shot, beautifully acted and directed. It's just wonderful. The art direction on it's just all great. And same with Thai production is just also wonderful. They have a wonderful sense of cinematography and aesthetic. I love it. The storylines are beautiful. Obviously, some of the production values are they're lower budget films, but what they do with what they have is just fantastic. I think it's outstanding.
I'm a huge fan. On the Scandinavian side, my good friend is a manager agent there, and it's just, I'm always, talking to these Danes and about, their cinema, and it's amazing stuff that they're doing in Norway and Denmark and in the rest.
And now they have all these great platforms to be able to screen it on and share it with the world.
Yep.
And just to show, before, distribution was such a limited game, it was such
a bottleneck.
Yeah, it was a closed shop. I mean, you had to literally go to Los Angeles and try and get it out there. The American film market was very, very tightly controlled. Whereas now, with the new streaming platforms, they need content. They are begging for content.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing too. Like, I feel like for these young filmmakers, there was one of this concept that I saw that I really was interested in, and I admire these guys. I believe it was called True Skin, and it was a short. It was this short that this kid shot in Bangkok, but yet it was really well done, and they did really great CGI, and it was a really interesting premise about this kid who stole this upgrade, technology, and he was walking around half robot. And they just walked through, they were just shooting around downtown Bangkok, but they did it right. And then they were able to, had a really good CGI team that was overlaying stuff over the top. And it got optioned by Amazon, and it was just a short these guys did, but it was a good concept, and they had the tech to be able to make it happen.
Well, a lot of the great, CGI work, the artists are based in Southeast Asia. Whether it's in Vietnam, in Singapore, Malaysia, in India, all these countries that are just, these artists are all sitting down at their computers creating all this content. A lot of the guys are doing a lot of the media work, but a lot of those people are just doing incredible work, on their own little projects because they're so talented. The technology is available to them. They have a laptop with a certain amount of processing power. They can do this work. They get the programs and off they go, and they're doing just fantastic work. I think in the next couple of years we'll see a lot of CG artists coming out of Southeast Asia who are really incredibly talented and will do bigger and better things, not just doing the hard labour work of putting the CG work out the screen, but creating content that we can all watch.
There's a team here in Vietnam called Action C, and they're a small team, but they started off as little spoof videos, right? And they started their own YouTube channel, and then suddenly they realized that they were killing it. They were really getting hundreds of millions of views per video, and their CGI was really good. Yeah. And they had all been working for other companies, and they said, wow, we can make a lot more money if we do this for ourselves and start creating our own content. And they started doing that. And I think you're spot on.
Once you start believing in your own work and getting it out there, it happens, because the talent is there, the creativity is there. You've got the means to do it now. Go and do it.
Yeah. I love that. Now, if you were to give advice to some young aspiring filmmakers, what type of advice would you give them?
Be passionate about what you do. Be passionate as far as you're not in it for the money, you're in it to create something. It's a big creative part of you, so follow that part of your dreams. Gobble up as much information as you can about technologies that's available to you and go out and shoot. Make mistakes, try and make mistakes, fix them, get better, keep going. Just keep going.
That's awesome. I love that. Now, what are some of your dreams that you have? What would you like to do in the future?
People ask me now because I'm obviously been doing it for a while. When are you going to retire? That's some of the question. I'm like, I have no plans of retiring. I still wake up every day going, let's go, I'm ready. The energy it gives me every day is fantastic. I love it. So I think I love to be involved in productions and that have a great creative force behind them or attached to them and be involved in that. Eventually, obviously, to shoot a movie that I'm really passionate about. Maybe it's a story that comes to me or I get introduced to, and it really hits you. When you read a script, those images jump out at you and you get connected to the characters straight away. It's all about storytelling. So I still look forward to, happy accidents happen. You come together with different people. You hear their story. You read their script. Things happen. I still look for that treasure. I'm still looking for it.
Let's get you back on sometime. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John.